All right, you guys ready for some Q&A, guys?
Sure.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here's one from Joseph Boza. Could the winner of the Dern versus Hivas fight be asked to be on standby in case something happens to Zhang Weili or Tatiana Suarez at UFC 312? Goes, what do you think? You like that, or did Verna maybe earn that spot?
Whether they are asked or not, considering that they're professionals and where they're at, I would definitely be ready. And I would be the person that would be pointing my finger up in the sky, telling people I want that position. I would definitely do that.
So you're saying the winner should include this in their post-fight speech?
Hell yeah. That's how people remember you, right?
Yeah. Danny, you like it?
I think the winner should absolutely do that, but who is most deserving to be like an official backup or something like that? Verna is certainly up there. She's done tremendous job in recent years, and she's a legit threat to the title in my opinion. So too bad she's not too mediatic. Like there's not a lot of media push or social media and fan push behind her, but I think she's super legit. I think she should be next. And frankly, the UFC should label an official backup because I love Tatiana Suarez, and I've always thought she has the potential to be champion, but man, is she unreliable, right? Like her body just hasn't always been there for her and has really hindered her from like getting to her full potential. So hopefully we see this fight, but man, I don't want to throw anything out there in the universe, so knock on wood, but if there's a fight that could fall through, I think that one probably has a good chance, right?
If she's at her best, you think she can beat Zhang Weili? I'm talking about Suarez.
Yeah, at her best though, right? And I don't know what we're gonna get at this point. Like she's riddled with so many injuries, and even if she wins the title, can you like bank on her defending it twice a year? Like I don't know. I just hope that her health issues are sort of behind her, but like we've been at this for a while, so I wish her the best, but that's certainly a point of concern.
Mm-hmm. Joseph Boza, Nolan, says that Colby told Submission Radio he plans on going up to middleweight after losing 3 of his last 4 fights. Will that be a plus or minus for Colby Covington, considering the Devils at middleweight? Yeah, man. I mean, what do you think here?
I think it's a really smart move, honestly. Like I do. I mean, he's got a terrible weight cut. I mean, if you listen to his interviews recently, I mean, what's the goal, right? If the goal is that he thinks he can go on and try to achieve something in the sport, I would say that he should move up. If he's just in it for paydays, perhaps he should stay at 170 pounds. But for me, his weight cuts have always been awful. The last couple of years, he's had essentially no voice at media day. They've been so bad. And what else is he going to do at 170? Like, is he going to who wants to see Colby Covington do the same thing again? I mean, I think the last couple of fights that we've seen him, I can't remember a drop off like that. I mean, granted, he fights so infrequently that it kind of makes sense. He's older. He went through the wars with Usman. But if you want to add any new wrinkle to anything to say, hey, something's going to be different, I think moving up a weight class when you've hit so many walls at the current one is not necessarily a bad idea.
I did not know that he struggles to make weight. I did not.
Yeah,
know
hasn't he historically said that he's like what
he used to
doesn't
say
walk
he could
around
go down.
heavy?
Yeah. He used to say he'd go down and fight Habib, and he doesn't look like one of the bigger 170er guys in stature. That's why I was kind of like really genuinely surprised that you said he struggled to make the weight.
Yeah, I mean, he just sounds super dehydrated. And he said, I had there was 1 week he said he had elevation poisoning. I forget, he said something else for the last one. Who knows with that guy what actually the truth is. But I do think divisional shifts when you hit so many walls at the one you're at, when you're that age, and when I think your interest is certainly the lowest that it's ever been. Like I never think it's a bad idea to explore divisions, whether it's up or down. I think it's a smart move. Unless you literally can't, unless you're cutting your legs off to make weight, then it's stupid.
Remember when I mentioned Chris Curtis earlier? He used to be a welterweight over at PFL and everything. He has reinvented himself as a middleweight, but you can tell he's out there undersized, but the power's there, and he's done pretty well for himself. Now, I can also think of Johnny Hendricks, who was a welterweight champion, but then when he tried to go up, you could just definitely tell it ain't going to work out, and that's kind of how I see it for Covington. You like that move for Covington, Goes?
I don't think so, man. I think unfortunately, it doesn't sound great, but just collect as many paychecks as you can at welterweight. I think you'll always be able to build a fight because you're Colby Covington.
And Shul Jubilee's gas station says, for the panel, how many months will the GFL survive before going bankrupt? Danny, you want to start things off here?
I mean,
we're not rooting for it, but we're answering the question.
Who knows?
And they have stacked up some talent. In fact, let me throw in this other question for you guys as you answer all this. Is GFL almost more talented than PFL? Go ahead, Danny.
Name value wise, yes. Like there are far more names on GFL right now that the casual fan base would recognize than they would be at PFL, 100%. But how relevant are those names sporting wise? I think some of them still have a little bit of juice left in them. I think others are probably past their expiration point per se, way past it. But all in all, I do think it's a good in a vacuum. If you have unlimited money, I think this is the way to go, right? You get as many names that are known as possible and you put them to fight against each other and you try to build stars off that as well. So in theory, I do think that GFL could do something big. And that was one of my bold predictions on last episode. I think that's going to be a point of conversation. I do think that they're going to have good amount of success. However, financially, I don't think that will translate. I think a lot of those contracts, I haven't seen any of them, but I mean, Tyron Woodley back in MMA or Paige VanZant back in MMA, like how much are you paying them to fight in MMA when they were so against it, right? Because the money wasn't there. Like at least $500,000, right? Or at least $1 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and those are just two names of like.
What are you saying? Woodley saying boxing money in MMA?
Right. So like, how much are you going to be spending on fight night? Like, are you going to be dropping 10, 15 million? Like, are you going to get that back with ticket sales and maybe some sponsorships and like a TV or streaming rights? Like, I don't know, man. It looks tough. I wish them the best because I do think that MMA right now is lacking of MMA promotions and PFL has done a horrible job with Bellator and even their own organization in 2024. So I think they're very much needed, but man, it's hard to make money in MMA. So I wish them the best,
and they're going to give half of their revenue to the fighters and also have insurance and retirement set up for these guys. So that's why the question is how many months do they get through 2025, Danny, real quick?
I would say yes. Sure.
Okay.
I think these promotions, when they go in with deep pockets. So, you know, I think they probably have some investors and they can run for the entirety of the year.
I'm thinking like Affliction goes, not that they had 2 shows. I'm sure GFL will do better than that, but they had kind of like a 2-year run, but only because the shows were spaced out and one got canceled. So I say they do make it through 2025. And I'm hoping they do, by the way, but I don't know if they make it through 2 years. What do you think, Ghost?
I think so. I think it's a lot like college sports. You know, you don't really judge them too much by that first year if you're an investor or whatever. And then after that, I'd say 2 to maybe 3 years. They probably came in with a plan and said, this is what we want to do over time. But like you said, ticket sales, right? Like, look at the 4 of us. If we had money to throw, would you spend it on those cards? Would you go do that? Or would you go watch your favorite concert or something like that? Like, I think I'd rather do the other, right? I don't know that any of these cards are going to sell tickets.
They need a big TV or streaming contract for sure. And then
that's where the money's at.
What do you think, Nolan? You've had a chance to let this marinate. How many months will the GFL survive before going bankrupt? That's a question from Anshul Jubilee's gas station.
Yeah, I mean, I think a year would be kind of my plus minus, my under over here. It's tough because they're just like you obviously with these big names, you think of the money they're throwing around. From what I've heard, even some of the prospects are getting like very solid flat purses with percentage based raises in them if they win, you know? So again, I think the vibes that I'm getting, and people like this Darren Owen guy that's running it, they obviously like the money that's coming at them. It provides more opportunities, but the big question is like, where is this money coming from? You know, like who's this investor that's willing to do this? So I feel like I've seen this song and dance before, so I'll be nice and say a year, but I'm going to be a little bit of a doubter until it comes to fruition.
Lazy Bed says, in the rumor mill, talk is swirling regarding PFL moving away from their regular season model in 2025 while still holding Grand Prix tourneys. Any traction to this talk? Nolan, we'll start with you since we'll go back to back here.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything, but I would love that. I think that's a big thing that's getting in their way right now is they don't need that thing to make them different. There's the UFC and there's them, and now obviously there's GFL, but don't let shoot yourself in the foot and let the tournament format get in the way of you making the best fights possible when you're going up against the UFC. So I would say scrap it. I would be super in favor in that. I think some of the feedback's been like that, and I hope that PFL is taking that approach going forward.
A classic example is a Kayla Harrison or a Dakota Ditcheva. Like Harrison did it 3 times, if I'm not mistaken, 2 of them, but you could just tell she didn't want to do it again. And I think Ditcheva's already at that point. So feature them in some big fight cards, wherever you do it, Riyadh or wherever you have to go, I guess, to sell tickets, make money. I don't know, but feature your best fighters as many times as possible. We've only seen Ngannou once, and I think we're going on 2 years since the signing. And he's not getting any younger either. Sky V's and El Daddy says, can Suarez influence signing Patchy? What do you think, Goes? Any pull there? Same manager too.
I think a little bit, but I think where Patchy may have gotten in a little bit of trouble is, once you kind of voice the fact that you're just not happy where you're at, you want to leave. I think if you're the UFC, you look at it and you go, well, now you have a guy who has no other options, right? Where else is he going to go? So I imagine maybe a big check that could have been awaiting him had he maybe played out his contract or something might be a little bit smaller because they kind of know he has nowhere else to go, right? But then you see like with the Risen champ coming over and getting an immediate shot, like if you have the right storyline, Tatiana Suarez wins a belt and you have this guy who is ultra promotable. Patchy Mix is very promotable. Maybe he could do something fun like that. You never know. But I think the UFC knows that they kind of got him a little bit.
Danny Lazy Bed says 2 hot prospects on this weekend's card. 1 short notice replacement. Any thoughts on the potential rise of Fatima Klein at 115 and Jacoby Smith at 170? And if you want to give it to Nolan, he specializes in the hot prospects. Or if you got it, go ahead, my man.
I know they're the favorites to win because I did look at what's that site called, bestfightodds.com or something. But honestly, I don't know a ton about them, so I'll toss this to Nolan King.
Me neither. How about you, Nolan? You know something here?
Yeah, I mean, they're both great prospects. I mean, Fatima Klein took the debut in July, up a weight class against Jasmine Jasudavicius, came up short. Clear physical advantage. She's one of the main training partners of Erin Blanchfield, so a lot of people have kind of viewed her as the next version of Erin. A little bit of a different fighter, but she's fantastic. I think the line is pretty crazy on that one. Last I looked, she was like a 7-1 favorite or something, minus 700 to win. So pretty crazy there. And then Jacoby Smith's been a guy I've been following since his pro debut. Oklahoma State University wrestler who kind of hung it up a little early in his wrestling career because he just kept getting banged up. So took some time off, healed up his injuries, got convinced to do MMA by Daniel Cormier out in AKA. And then eventually along the way, he ended up moving to Dallas to train with Saif Saud and Fortis. And he's looked spectacular on Contender Series this couple months ago. Great showing there against his first like real regional test. And I think he's one of the ones Dana White's been mentioning whenever anybody asks him about who he liked from the season. And I can't agree more. I think he's a tremendous prospect. I'm excited. 7 days notice for your debut is certainly not ideal though.
Yeah.
Last question here comes from Brian John. If Adesanya wins his next fight, do you see him getting another title shot? I think all 3 of you can jump on this. Goes, make it quick, but what do you think here? Could he get there?
I hate it, but I know the UFC likes him and they'll do whatever they can to put him in good positions like that. So I don't think it's crazy, but I hope it doesn't happen.
And him and Strickland and him and DDP, it can kick off just like that. There's different angles to it, but what do you think, Danny? Can he get there? He's got to beat Nasruddin Imavov in Saudi Arabia first.
I would say it's possible. Like, I don't think it's crazy to say, but I also think that Hamzat has that second or that like next title shot on lock. So I'd be surprised if a win over him would surpass what Hamzat has done. And I think at this point, it does feel like Adesanya fell off. It just doesn't feel like he's the same anymore. I wonder how much can he recover from that with the immovable performance. But if I had to put money on it, no, I think Hamza gets the next one.
Nolan King, 30 seconds. Does he get a title
Yeah.
shot?
I think it's going to depend on timing. I mean, that's a huge part of this that we overlook a lot of times. Chimaev should be next, but where can he fight, right? Is that part of it? Is part of the issue? And then you also got Caio Bahaio, and like, where does he fit in with this whole thing? So I'm going to say no immediate because Chimaev should be next. But again, circumstance is a huge factor in this whole thing.
Stay healthy, stay ready, and win.